I was raised in a BGC home and First Baptist Church of Coon Rapids, and my grandmother was part of Bethel. My mother was part of Bethel. And so it was pretty much just clearly laid out that I would be part of Bethel as well. So I came here. I don't even think I visited Bethel. I just showed up on the first day with my little red Camaro, and I was packed in the, had all my stuff packed in the back, and yeah, that's how it started. I mean, I had my best friends here. I went to Anoka High School, which was a big high school, and I was really kind of on the margins of a lot of things there. And here, it felt like home. The people here were, I made good friends. I didn't actually go on my first date until I was a senior, which was still a little touchy. But other than that, good friends, good times. Yeah, knew everybody. It felt like home. When I had my first opportunity to teach an adjunct class, I remember walking out of that class for the first time, and it was fantastic. I mean, I felt so connected, so at home, so like, this is who I am and this is where I'm supposed to be. And I've had that feeling for a long, long time. I was ABD, so I had just finished all the coursework for my PhD. And I had been in contact with Lita Frazier, who was the department chair at the time. And she said, you need to do this. And I don't even remember much of the interview process because she wanted me as part of the faculty. And so, yeah. And I had been teaching, at that point I'd been teaching for 12 years. And so I felt like I was getting to be a much better teacher. I was, when you come out of PhD school, it's like, there's like interesting questions and all, you get excited about ideas. And so it was a really nice fit. I am amazed with the kind of students that we get. Every year I get to know students who just take my breath away, the things that they do. And it's so inspiring to see them as freshmen. I'll be honest, especially young women who are not confident, who are just doing what they think they're supposed to do, and how they find their voice and they change in the 4 years that they're here. So I think that has always been the case. What I see now, I still get excited about the kinds of things that my students do. I do think the fact that so many of them work these jobs, like they're working all the time, and I've never seen students so busy and so stressed. And I think when you got so many different kinds of things going on, you just can't focus on any one thing. So I see a lot more stressed students, and I mean, I get it. I mean, this place is expensive, but that's changed the classroom. It's changed the student experience, and honestly, the biggest thing that's changed for me, I spent 10 years traveling Europe with them for a whole semester with Europe term, and once they cut that program, that was heart-wrenching for me. And all of a sudden, I felt like it was so hard to be part of the life change, that these students are experiencing. Instead, I'm a little bit more of, I stand back and watch it happen. A lot of times, they're not going to be the first people to raise their hands or to talk in class, so they're a little more hesitant about their ideas and whether what they have to say is worthwhile. I think a lot of them fall into maybe some of the stereotypes that we have of how women are supposed to behave, how they're supposed to act, that they might have picked up in high school. Now, this is not all women, but I see this a lot. And then what usually happens is they get into one of my speech classes. First speech, they're absolutely petrified, and they get so nervous, and they do it, and you just see every single speech, they gain more and more confidence. And by the end, a lot of these women, and it's so fun as a class to watch this, because by the end, these young women are powerful and moving, and they've figured out how to tell their story and how to use the things that have happened to them and the things that they're interested to really grab an audience and move people. It's fun. That's why I like teaching public speaking. I mean, it changed my life, and I think it can change the lives of a lot of people. Well, clearly, Lita. I never had her as a professor. I was actually on the committee to help hire her. But she persuaded me to get a PhD. She said, "You can do it." I was like, "Oh, you can do it." She guided me through sort of the interview process here. Within 1 year, I was the department chair, and I thought that was like really something special at that time. Now I find out, it's still kind of special, but I think she was just tired. But she was always supportive. She was a strong woman. She was really a role model. I think the other person that had a really profound impact on me was Kathleen Evans. And I'm sure you've heard that a lot. But there was almost every single time I was in Europe term, I was in the middle of some foreign country, usually in the middle of like nowhere, Poland. I would have a student in a mental health crisis. She was my first call, and she was always there, willing to kind of talk me through it, talk me like, how should I handle this? What's going on? What are my options? And I don't think I would have been willing to do that if she hadn't already laid that groundwork in the different committees we were on, and always asking me, how am I doing? And really seeing me as a young woman faculty. So when Lita first came, it was all men. And one of them maybe had a communication background. I think the rest were like well-meaning pastors. Because anybody can communicate. And she came in there, and she was a strong woman, and she changed that department. She raised the standards, but she was always fighting against this. She was a woman, and this was a long time ago. And in many ways, she blazed the path for a lot of people, I think. But she had to put up with a lot. And that sort of male-dominated communication studies era was still there when I first started. So I definitely felt that I had to be a strong woman and make sure that my ideas were articulate, and I pushed on them, and I had to be outspoken and those kinds of things. But over the years, things have definitely changed. At this point, we're even at this point. So, with different kinds of hires, when we hired Nancy Bruley, she's a super strong woman, and I think she also raised the standards of the department. So I do think it's the key women in our history that have really shaped the department and created the rigor and the high standards and some of those things. For the most part, we've had these amazing women leaders, the deans and so in that respect, it hasn't been difficult. But especially when I first came, I'm a young woman, there were plenty of faculty meetings, and it was almost always just faculty meetings, faculty committees, where, and maybe it's because I'm a communication person and I was especially sensitive to this, but I was shut down, I was talked over, I was interrupted, I was ignored. And I remember in plenty of meetings just sitting there and being like, okay, it's not worth it. And just kind of laying back. I don't see that happen as much. And I think these were individuals that probably didn't realize that they were doing that sort of thing. Well, like I said, I had 3 kids, one of whom had all sorts of medical issues. So for the first 15 years I was here, even full-time, I had to get my son on the bus, quick, come here, teach my classes, and then get home and get him off the bus. And he was sick a lot, so I had to always be managing, like, okay, he can't go to school today. Are we going to get a nurse come in? or a PCA, or the PCA can't show up, and it was really stressful. And there were times when he was really sick, and I was trying to manage this and the other two kids, and yeah, it was hard, but it was great because Lita was super understanding. I was able to adjust my class schedule to meet sort of my life challenges at the time. So I don't know, I don't think I could have done any other kind of job if it wasn't for the flexibility I had at Bethel. And it honestly, you know, when you have a child with all these kinds of disabilities, I think most moms, like in my church, I would say, wonderful women. I appreciate them so much. But it can be overwhelming hanging out with someone like me, because, you know, Aaron had so many things going on. And so I was fairly isolated, but when I came here, I felt connected. And so for me, that was a really important part of that part of my life. Like I said, I think a lot of my friends that I hung out with from church, well, I didn't hang out with them, but people I knew from church had a very different experience than me. And it was a combination of me being a professor, I think that might have been intimidating, and the fact that I had so many challenges with my son. It was just really hard to relate. And this is on me too, but after a while, you know, you're not going to like go out of your way to spend awkward time with this poor woman with all these challenges that you have nothing in common with, you know. So eventually, I think I think raising a child with a lot of handicaps is an isolating experience. But I think the professional piece can be intimidating to other women, and I still feel that, and I try. Yeah, I mean, once I get to know people and they get to know me, they realize that, you know, I've got just as many issues as they do. But I think, especially for young women raising kids, it is a different experience, and I think it is difficult for. I think that being a professor piece and you know, especially like when I had my books and I was doing a lot of public speaking, and I think that was a little bit intimidating. Like I've said before, the absolutely most impactful thing for me and for my students has been study abroad. And the kinds of relationships that I built with those students, the way that God shaped my own life in those experiences, I miss that. And I think, honestly, that's probably one of the reasons I ended up asking, okay, what's next now? And getting into consulting and some of the other things that I've been doing. So, I don't know. I'm just really impressed with the power of study abroad, I would say. I did 10 Europe terms, I did one with Sharon Pelham, one with Tom Johnson, and then I did an interim with Bruce Olson. And he kept me organized, so that was fun. Well, clearly, I hope that they reinstitute faculty-led study abroad programs. Yeah. But in general, you know, my bias is towards helping people find their voice. And I do hope that as we sort of, you know, you take your business classes, you take your science classes, and you specialize much sooner, much more, I'd say, clearly as before, that we don't miss the opportunity to figure out how to use your voice and how to communicate in a way that's going to impact other people and improve your relationships. I think that's really important. But more and more, I see these students that have got big ideas and big dreams, probably more so than in the past. I think their worldview is bigger. And it's exciting to see the kinds of sacrifices they're willing to make and types of risks they're willing to take. So I do have a lot of really positive hope for the future.